So I'm here with my fellow geeky clinicians. As always, I'm Dr. Deborah, Chief Geek here at Geeky Clinicians, and I'm going to let the fellow geeky clinicians introduce them. And then I can just tell you we are excited for our guest today. And I will introduce her, Carmella Long, and we will have a wonderful discussion. And so, welcome. And Jacinta,
I'm
please.
Jacinta. I'm lead geek.
Hello,
Mona.
everyone. My name is Mona. I am a geeky clinician here, a resident at 3D Psychotherapy. Hello. So great to be here.
All right, guys. So today we have the privilege and honor of having Carmella Long, LCSW-C, who is a licensed clinical social worker with 19 years of experience, and she's based out of Baltimore, Maryland, where she leads a group practice dedicated to fostering the healing and resilience in progressive individuals of color. Okay, can't wait to hear more about progressive individuals of color.
Yeah.
Specializing in clients who are self aware yet encounter challenges stemming from past issues or future anxieties. Carmella utilizes therapeutic models such as CBT, CPT, and mindfulness-based cognitive therapy to facilitate mental and emotional growth. So, welcome, Carmella. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm happy to be here. I love the geeky clinicians.
Yay.
Yay. So, Carmella, thank you so much for taking your time to talk with us today. Tell us your origin story, right? Tell us not only your journey to becoming a clinician, but also your journey to becoming a successful group practice owner.
Okay, or a successful supervillain.
So, yes.
I saw origin story. I'm like, tell my supervillain story. Well, again, thank you so much for having me, Deb. So like most, there is a it starts from a personal place of wanting to help people and wanting to help people understand the circumstances that they may have grown up in that kind of drive the car on the way they see life and the way they see problem solving. So I remember growing up, I would always say the first question was, why are we in this situation and why is everyone around me sort of oblivious to the dysfunction of it? And then B, how can I help a person that grew up in this environment that sort of is all over the place and help them to create a mindset that they can add to their way of coping in life? Because a lot of times we grow up, we learn how to cope with many things, we learn how to tolerate many things, but we haven't quite healed from the deeper things. And so I mentioned progressive people of color. And honestly, I'm actually changing that coinage in terms of
Okay.
people of color. Um, in today's climate with the political climate, I don't necessarily want to focus on people of color because that kind of lumps everyone together. And I want to unlump it and I want to focus on some of the most vulnerable people in our community. And so my personal focus is the vulnerability of professional African Americans because although they have progressed in many areas of life, there is usually something within their mindset or within the way they process things that's linked to past trauma from childhood and carries over to adulthood because usually we have a confirmation bias, whereas things happen and it confirms our original way of thinking. Like, we'll see, I told you, right? And so helping people to dismantle any of the old wiring that has created a mindset that seems to be getting in the way of their progression to a new way of thinking, a more progressive way of thinking, and a more freeing way of thinking compared to what the environment has seemed to kind of show them time and time again.
Okay. All right. So making this shift towards really focusing on professional people of color. Did you say professional women of color? Right?
Professional Black women, yes.
Professional Black women, and really helping that journey from maybe the limiting beliefs and confirmation bias experiences that they've had to really being able to remove any upper limit stuff and be able to have a new views on their healing. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yes, because that statement of if you can't dream it, you can't perceive it. And you
Yes.
can't really progress towards it because you can't really see it. So removing that barrier of what women can and can't do, of what Black women are appreciated for, removing that stereotype of the most disrespected, because no one disrespects me. I'm a Black woman. So
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Excellent. So that's the kind of clinical journey. Tell us about your origin story of your practice. I see your logo behind you. I love your logo. Tell us about the name, like how'd you come up with the name of your practice, your logo, your origin story? Like wait, at some point, I think, we all start as clinicians. We graduate from programs and we're super green and we're super new at doing the clinical work. I know for me personally, I never thought about having a private practice. I worked in the area of homelessness and addiction in institutions and had worked in jails and things like that. So the idea of owning my own private practice was not even something that came up till years later. And then because again, it's not like they teach it to us in our programs, right? Did anybody here have a start your private practice 101 course in your degree program? We
absolutely
didn't.
not. No.
Right? So tell us your journey to being able to go from idea to reality with that, and tell us the whole origin story of that.
Well, I seem to plot my life in 5-year increments. That's even getting an overhaul. But I've been pretty successful with planning every 5 years what I'd like to do. So before I started my private practice, purposely after school, I worked in several different areas of the field. I wanted to get a good idea of what it looked like from a adoption, foster care, children, mental health, inpatient, outpatient, uh, from a assertive community treatment standpoint. I wanted to see what it looked like academically. I wanted to see what it looked like from a case management standpoint. And I did that on purpose in my career so that I would end up with a well-rounded understanding of the field and the different ways helpers can maneuver within the job description. And so I had said at a certain age, oh, when I get this age, I'm going to start a private practice so that I can focus on my origin issue of how do I help women that maybe came from not such a great place and doing well, but still feeling stuck. So I made this 5-year plan and I was doing case management and doing a little therapy on the side. And then COVID hit. And just like everyone else, I started questioning life and what am I doing in life? But before I got to the end of the question, I got bored at home. I got a little stir crazy at home alone. And I said, I need a different atmosphere so that I can unstick my mind in terms of life and what's going to happen next with COVID. So I went to Mexico. I planned to spend about 3.5 weeks there, maybe 4 if everything worked out. And I just wanted a place where I looked up a place where, they were taking COVID seriously, mass seriously, and the numbers were low. And I found a little town called San Miguel Allende. in Mexico, beautiful space that's known for weddings, actually.
Oh,
And
okay.
so I love beautiful atmosphere. So I said, perfect, I'm going to go and just work from there. I was a manager at that time, and we were all remote. So I figured, okay, this is what I'm going to do just to kind of release some things in this fear of the unknown. And then 2.5 weeks in, my VPN didn't work. I couldn't get into my company's website. So I called my supervisor and I said, hey, I can't get into the website. There's something happening with the VPN. She's like, oh, no, I meant to call you because not HR, the people who check your computer system.
IT.
Yes. IT sent me an email and said there was something suspicious on your emails. You're not in Mexico, are you? Ha ha ha. And I said, and I am. Yes, I'm in Mexico. And she goes, well, I don't think you can work from Mexico. I said, well, no offense, but the CEO just said last month that luckily we can work from anywhere. So this is anywhere. So if you can just get IT on the line and fix my VPN, we'll be all set. And she said, I don't know. This might be a problem. I'm like, okay, get the people on the line. Who do I need to talk to? So CEO gets on, HR gets on, and at this moment, I'm still feeling quite brave and bold. And I'm like, well, I don't see what the problem is, and just fix it. And they asked me to sign off until I got back because they just didn't feel comfortable with me being there. So I said, okay, that's fine. I signed off and then I wrote down.
I mean, that was really like a major bold move. Like that's a big girl move. And then it sounds absolutely terrifying at the same time, like equally exciting and terrifying.
I got off that phone. I said, oh my God, I'm going to be fired. I've never been fired before. What am I doing? I'm at a good place in my career. I need to figure out a fake abuela that's passed away here or something. And I went to breakfast and another Black woman was there working. She's like, hey, are you working from here also? And I said, well, I think I just got fired. So I'm just going to eat my sorrows away. And she happened to be from DC and she worked for the government and she was in like Health and Human Services Department or something like that. And she said, well, what do you do? I said, well, I'm a social worker by trade. I have my license. And she said, well, why don't you start a private practice? And I'm like, well, I thought about that. I said, and then I thought to myself, I actually said 5 years ago I was going to start a private practice this year. So I said, well, yeah, I guess I suppose I'll look into it. And I looked into it. I started researching and I started applying to be a provider for insurance companies. And just like that, I was in private practice 5 years after I said I would be.
Awesome. Awesome.
So don't quit your job though before you start a private practice.
Don't run away to Mexico and just
Yeah.
like quit our jobs and just go. Yeah, that's definitely an example, right? We often talk about here in Geeky Clinicians that uh, our niche is us and we are our niche, right? And that bold move was definitely upper limit breaking. You smashed that, right? And so I feel like that is really the example. You're living the example of what you're going to teach your clients. At least that's what I heard. Mona, Benta.
Yeah, that's exactly what I hear. I'm also interested to know what the name of your practice, what inspired that.
Well-being in practice. So my logo is a bee holding a little book sitting in a chair, basically like a therapist talking to a client. That's because the overwhelming word that I had in my brain was I just want people to be well.
Mm.
Right. And so I'm like, okay, a cute little bee doing therapy. But then well-being in practice, I thought to myself, change, especially when it comes to mindset and when it comes to how you process and according to your internal rules and assumptions, it will take a lot of practice to actually change some of those old points of view. And you have to practice anything that I teach you. Just because we talked about it once will not change the fiber of your being. You have to consistently practice it. And I I heard someone say this. They said, um, when you are attempting to learn something new, the more you look at your problems as opportunities to practice that new thing that you learn, you shape problems into possibilities.
Mm.
So you got a problem in front of you. Instead of saying, oh gosh, I've got this problem, instead, oh gosh, this is an opportunity to work on that thing that happens every time I have a problem. So your well-being really lies in how much you take the opportunity to practice all of those coping skills that we talk about in there.
Absolutely, absolutely. I love that. That the possibilities, right? Like the possibilities that are born out of uh, potentially perceived obstacles, right? So it's not an obstacle, it's a possibility. It's an opportunity for growth, an opportunity to practice those skills. And so I love that. And I often I say to clients that therapy doesn't happen in those 50 minutes. It happens between those 50 minutes. Because what we cover and learn and teach in the 50 minutes, you have to go and put into real life practice between those 50 minutes. And we can really see very clearly when we're working with clients, the ones who are doing the work when they're not in front of us versus the ones that think that I come here for the 50 minutes, you're supposed to give me the wisdom and fix me. But that's not how therapy works, right?
Absolutely.
So Carmella, what would you say has been one of your biggest challenges as it relates to being a practice owner? And first, tell us a little bit about your practice as well. You told us about the name and the origin there, but tell us about like kind of uh, who you serve in the here and now, what that looks like, and then tell us about some of the biggest challenges you've had on the road to where you are today.
Okay. So I predominantly practice in my community in the city of Baltimore. And a lot of my clients are most of my clients are Medicaid recipients, and then you have your Blue Cross and other insurances that I accept. So right now I have two employees that are in practice. They each specialize in something slightly different, but we all have the same goal for the community that we're in and that we serve. One of my clinicians, she's the newest, she actually focuses in on multiracial individuals who have run into obstacles kind of when it comes to belongingness or when it comes
Mm,
to worthiness because of the different cultural differences. And her specific audience are perhaps people of color that have a white mom. And so she helps to kind of bridge the gap because she feels like a lot of times they have to choose one or the other. And they also have to sit in a space where whatever they choose might not be as accepting to them in any given environment. My other young lady, she is actually Muslim, and so she practices within the Muslim community. And she deals with a lot of women's issues when it comes to societal's traditional expectations versus the client's internal struggle to meet those traditional expectations, but also to be able to develop a sense of self outside of their traditional roles. So, in tandem, we just try to work with women and men. We do have some men to, again, work on the push and pull from society compared to how they can maneuver within their environment without such obstacles and issues. So the biggest challenge for me building a group practice. One was what seemed to be this abyss of no information, despite being connected to so many clinician networks online. It was like no one could share a lot of information with me on how to start a private practice. And even though people had private practices, no one was either willing to or could take the time to sit down with me and give me the A through Z. And so I found myself having to pay consultants money that I didn't really have. But the only way I seemed to be privy to information is if I paid for it. And I found that unfortunate, especially in our community, when we talk about we need more Black therapists. But where do you learn how to advertise? Where do you learn how to create it so that they will come? And so that was super difficult. I ended up bartering with a person I contracted with because I also do clinical supervision for the past 10, 12 years. So I ended up bartering with a local community health company to say, hey, I'll see your pre-licensed individual if you teach me how to bill Medicaid. Because another thing they don't tell you, you can get on insurance panels, but they don't necessarily teach you how to actually bill them. So,
Yes, yes,
it definitely
exactly.
was a lot of trial and error with the insurance companies. So that was the hardest thing, having someone to, I won't say handhold, but sit and help me understand how it's done. So that's why I purposely do that with anyone that's in clinical supervision with me.
Mhm.
Because again, they don't teach you it in school. So when are you supposed to learn how to be an independent practitioner that can start your own, practice if you wanted to?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Um, this is kind of speaks to the origin story of geeky clinicians, right? Like when I kind of took that big leap to go into private practice full time, um, there was not. It was hard to find community, right? It was hard to find other people with the same struggles, right? There were lots of peer consultation. Let's process these cases, which is great because you need that because, again, we're our own instrument, so we shouldn't be practicing in a vacuum. But in terms of those things, like you just said, like having to figure out like how to do a CMS 1500, recognizing the differences between different insurance panels, getting, back in the day, and again, I'm aging myself, but back in my day, we were told some very wrong information, but we were told, because this is how it was back then, it was very simple. You want to have a private practice, you get on insurance panels, the insurance company sends you clients, and then that's it. There's no concept of marketing, networking, branding. What? There was nothing. There was no information of that. It was just this assumption that if you get into bed with these Blue Cross Blue Shields and other insurance companies, that they would take care of you. And we know the world is not that way.
Not at all.
And so to be able to fellowship, commune, and connect with other practice owners who are learning in the same, tripping, falling, bumping our heads and learning along with each other. That's really was the origin of Geeky Clinicians, and wanting to have that community. And so we started that. And Carmella, you've been coming almost since day one, like for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, I was definitely lucky to find geeky clinicians because I did feel like first I was doing all of this running around and this hyper focusing and this really challenging my own fears about being able to pay my bills as my own boss. And so for the first 2 or 3 years, I just worked under this pressure where there was no one that I could have a conversation with about any of this. And so I think we happened to meet after going to a psychotherapy networker event, and to hear that you had this space, that just opened up so much for me to be able to process. And I like even the schedule of it because within a week or two, all kind of questions can come up and you're like, I don't really know who to ask or run this by or, at least mull it over with. And so Geeky Clinicians has provided just a space where, you're not going to tell confidential things, but you get to be honest about, oh my God, this is a lot. How can I break this down into smaller pieces? Because therapists are human also.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like I tell my clients, sometimes you're looking at that picnic plate like, oh my gosh, how am I going to eat all this food? But in reality, you've got one spoon and you just taste one thing at a time. But it helps for someone to help you to navigate that plate so that you don't sit alone overwhelmed.
Okay. All right. Mona, Jacinta?
One thing that you said,
I'm interested to know what CP.
Oh, Jacinta, then Mona.
one thing that you said early on, you were saying something about um, the African American client coming and talking to you and needing to see things differently when they are the same as they've always been.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that a little more?
So I indicated the word progressive because what I'm finding is a lot of people have succeeded from a educational standpoint, from a business standpoint, even some from a relationship standpoint. But there tends to be this gnawing feeling of, you know, I expected these things or I expected people to do certain things, or I have all these assumptions and from a theoretical standpoint, I understand everybody's different, but how come I can't get my needs met in this area? Right. And so, like, a really good topic that keeps coming up is singlehood, and the mindset of what it looks like to be a couple, to be married, to have your significant other. And the key word is companionship. And so, a lot of my therapy for rewiring is psychoeducation. And I use a lot of black and white words. So you want a companion. Let's actually look at the true meaning behind the word companion. A companion is simply another individual that you enjoy spending time with and who enjoys spending time with you. That's a simple companion. Anybody can be a companion. So rewiring that idea of, yes, you can still want to mate, but let's not brush over the idea that you have a close friend, you have a close cousin, you have an aunt that you're close to, and you're maybe not putting as much weight on that relationship, or you're not giving as much energy to that relationship because you're still spinning your wheels and putting your energy in the universe for something that's just not it right now. You don't have that right now. So you don't have that ideal mate, but you do have a companion. And what if you focused on that and rewired your mind to embrace what you have in the present so that you're not always searching for happiness in your future?
Yeah. I like that. I like that. So kind of shifting that from that anticipatory future focus to grounding in the here and now and putting the gas of gratitude in our tank so that we can shift our energy to maybe attract some of the things that we're trying to have because desperate energy ain't attractive.
Ma'am.
So So if we could ground in that sense of peace, of contentment,
Yeah.
then we become more attractive.
Yeah. 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 Because who doesn't want to meet a happy, satisfied person? That's always the key.
Yeah. Mona, you were going to say something?
Yeah, this is kind of shifting lanes a little bit. But I know at the beginning in your bio, Dr. D shared that you work with CPT.
Mm-hmm.
What is that?
So that's cognitive processing therapy.
Okay.
And that is a therapy model that really helps with, again, that rewiring of your experience of trauma. And so, in processing the trauma, we get the initial story, but then as we continue with the strokes painting that picture, you get to develop a picture not from when you experienced it as at the age of 10. You now get to start to clean up that story as you now understand it as an adult. So the more you process this trauma, you'll begin to see, yes, your concrete thinking is different when you were a child. And so using your abstract thinking, that same situation, you can now lend more life information to it. And it now no longer is that scary, dark picture. You can see, oh, well, we did experience this also. You can add the also to that picture, and then you could add your resilience to that picture in terms of processing how it affected you. And now that picture is not only more balanced, but it also, with processing, it now cognitively has rewired your understanding of what it took away from you. Now you can see where it may have added to you and where you need to tweak those things while processing it in CBT.
Mm, love that.
Man, when I say it out loud, I'm like, yeah, that's pretty good. Thank goodness for modalities.
Excellent. So, Carmella, we talked about some of the biggest challenges on this journey. Tell us about some of the biggest wins. What are some of the things that you feel most proud of, or feel are some of your biggest wins as it relates to this, the business of clinical journey?
I say my biggest win is that connection from my personal place to my professional goal, where I get to see people who may have come from a difficult upbringing with difficult ideas about why they are how they are. And I get to help them understand how to get closer to their ideal self with their own personal works. And so professionally, I get tired. I have my own life and I have my own things that I work through. But I love seeing that because of what I created and because of my passion for it, not only do I get to walk with people who are changing their mindsets in order to benefit their mental health, but I also get to do clinical supervision and teach other clinicians how to use their own personal passion for why they came into the field to effect change that truly matters. Part of our mission statement is that we want to help the client in order for them to help their community and their future lineage with the ideology that is more caring and loving towards themselves versus our taught way of surviving in this world. And I hired two amazing people who are doing amazing work, um, especially my pre-licensed individual. I feel like with the right supervision, if she's passionate about therapy, she'll understand it's a lifelong learning opportunity. And in the learning and in speaking to clients, you also inspire yourself to continue your own journey.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This idea of having a teaching practice, right? In some ways, right? 3D psychotherapy is definitely a teaching practice, and we love our pre-licensed clinicians and our students. And so to watch them grow and bud in their clinical identity, it's like it is definitely very rewarding. And so, and you said you've been doing supervision for how many years again?
I think 10 or 12 years, something like that, ever since I moved to the States. So,
Mhm.
and that's actually really my passion, to work with clinicians um, so that they develop themselves, so that they may be a better service in the community. Because when you are struggling with um, feeling like you're an imposter or feeling like you don't know a lot, I want to be able, I want them to be able to work with clients, but also some of that things that they're teaching their clients, start to do it yourself so that you can have a real world understanding of even the challenges in a person trying to change their mindset in order to progress.
Absolutely. I think that doing the personal work is really important. And so Jacinta is our our lead clinician here at 3D Psychotherapy, and she does a lot of the supervision uh, in with our students. She does all the supervision with them. She does admin supervision with our PMRPs, um, and is on the road to getting the CPCS in 2025, I think,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, any questions about the supervision, being a supervisor, going along this supervision journey, Jacinta, as you prepare to go through that curriculum in 2025?
Well, it was 10 years, been 10 years since you went through the training. I wonder if you remember what was most challenging.
I think what was most challenging is, as a clinician, understanding what wasn't taught to me compared to the board's uh, demands on, or the board's instructions on what supervision is supposed to look like. Because they do have regs, in terms of what's supposed to be provided in supervision. And yes, the regs are great, but then that starts to interrupt the creativity that could be found in supervision and the support that can be found in supervision.
Yeah.
So I do my, monthly documentation. I try to keep documentation on every subject that we take, and then I do my biannual assessment. And it seems like when you add paperwork in there, it becomes just another part of documentation. So that's the challenging
Oh,
part.
Yeah,
yeah.
that's that's challenging, and that's
Yeah, documentation.
documentation,
Yeah.
yes. And I want to ask the question of Mona, who's at the beginning of this journey, and in this space where she is actively under supervision and is a postmaster's resident here. Tell us about, like, what would you want from, like, an ideal supervisor, or what are the things that you get from supervision that really feed you? That's a better question. What are you getting from supervision that really is feeding you as a growing clinician?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would say what I get from supervision is perspective, first and foremost, like a different perspective on how to approach the case, right, of who I'm dealing with as the client is concerned. And then I'll also say I'm strengthening my skills a lot more in that aspect as well. I feel like supervision helps me to kind of look at how I'm doing my skills and then which ways that I could be more creative. I'm going to use your word, Carmella, like to be more creative in the space of what services that I am providing the client. Let's see, what else? What else is supervision providing me? Also, too, as we were talking, what was coming up is like, I, like other topics that I want to talk with my supervisor about, just certain things as it pertains to private practice and billing, like learning those types of things, right? And understanding the back end of things and how to really maneuver through it. Because I do want to open up a private practice eventually, right? So these different topics that using my supervisor as a resource for the things. I get a lot of resources from supervision, like a lot.
Yes. And that's built in to your postmaster's residency, right? So if you complete the postmaster's residency, the final portion of the postmaster's residency does include training on if you want to start your own practice. It does include that. It also includes if you want to go for a doctoral degree, if you want to explore different milieus, right? It includes what next. Like now you're licensed, what next?
Right.
So, yeah.
Grateful.
Yeah. So, Carmella, the question that we ask all of the guests as we wrap up is, what are your best hopes? What are your best hopes for our clinical profession? What are your best hopes for the industry that is private practice and group practice? We know that there are a bunch of IT companies that are wearing an outfit, a mask that is clinical. We're not going to, we shall not name them, but what are your best hopes for the future of this world?
Our best hopes is that we get through the next 4 years with the resources that our communities that we serve not so limited, so that we can help versus only giving ways to cope with it. That's my hope.
Okay.
I think we all have a fear of the unknown, and I mean the unknown could be AI, it could be these companies, but as I explained to a clinician earlier today, some people felt that their personal lives, they have a great boundary between their personal life and the clients that they serve. But when it comes to politics, we all have to understand it in terms of the trickle-down effect and how it affects our clients and how it affects the resources that can allow us to have a big reach. Because if it's limited and they don't have the resource to see a therapist, they're just going to be out there struggling and feeling as if they really don't have any options. So I hope this next 4 years, we're all able to not only help clients cope with the changes, but also that despite all of the news on it, it's not so detrimental to the people who need it the most.
Okay. So lots and lots of hope. Lots and lots of hope. Staying in that place of hope that the people we serve, the people who most desperately need the services that we provide, are able to continue to find and access good quality therapeutic services. And I think that's essential. Excellent. Yeah. And on that note, Carmella, tell us about how people can find you, connect with you, your website, Insta, all of those things. And yeah.
All right. Well, my website is Wellbeing IP. So that's short for in practice. So wellbeingip.com. You can also find me at BEEWELL LCSW-C.com. And you can also follow us on Instagram at WellbeingIP.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being here today and being with us and having this great discussion. Excellent. Thank you guys. We'll see you guys
Thank
next
you so
time.
much.
Bye.
Bye.